Ever struggled to find the right answer across tons of documents, reports, files? Well, multiple rack is a smarter way to search questions, understand context, and retrieve the best answers for you. Let's dive in.
In this video, I would like to consider two ways how we can create the rack with multiple documents. The first one is a simple one, so-called naive rack, where we have the database, so-called vector database, that is populated with the number of vectors. And how these vectors are created? Well, we have the internal documents, papers, PDFs, that we have to convert first using the embedding model. And once we convert it using the embedding model into the numerical representation, we have the vectors that will be stored in the database. And these databases can be served as the context for the LLM to answer the user queries. Before we start, just to make sure that you have imported the OpenAI API key and you have installed and imported all necessary LangChain libraries. For the naive rack to work, the idea here would be to iterate over the files that we want to use as a rack and then keep all of the files in a single place, right? So for that, first of all, we need to understand which files we have in the system. For that, I will use the listdir command, and then I will refer to the folder where the files are stored. So I have the 3 files here. And the next step would be to iterate over all of these files and keep them in a single place. Okay, so we can define the all pages as the list, empty list, where we can iterate over the file paths. And for each file, what we need to have to do is, first of all, we need to load the pypdf loader instance, right? And this one will be important for us to extract text from the PDF. So it's a text extractor. And then we need to extract the pages, individual pages from each PDF using the loader load and split method. And what we need to do is to add all the pages from all the files that we have into single place. Okay. And the next step would be to create the vector space. We can define as the vector store. We will use the faiss vector space. So who wants to know about this algorithm more, I would recommend you to look this up. It's a Facebook search algorithm that relies on the similarity between different context and the words and help us to understand our context better. So we will use faiss, where we will convert our pages, all the pages that we defined before, using the OpenAI embeddings. The next step would be to define the LLM, right? And for this one, we'll use GPT 3.5. That's why I ask you guys to import the OpenAI API key for that. So we will use the chat GPT as an LLM. We would also need to import the template for the prompt. And once we import this, we would need to build the rack chain that will help us to run the rack, right? So we will define the retriever using the vector store as retriever method, and we will define the chain. The chain basically is the pipeline. It's the most fundamental part of the LangChain library. It's the ability to define the pipelines or the workflows for your specific tasks. So here we will use the retriever that will serve as a context, and we will use our question as a prompt, where we will define the LLM and output parser for the formatting issue. For example, can ask, what are NVIDIA achievements for in 2024? And as you can see, it gives us the perfect answer for this question. You may think that it all works perfectly, but for example, if you want to look into the sources that rack relied on, you can see that the most of the sources are 24 annual report and 23 annual report. And that's the major issue of the naive rag. It helps us to identify the context, but it's not enough especially when it's more complex. So here we're trying to find the achievements for the specific year, right? But the way how the rag works, it treats every year almost the same because it's the same company, it's the same information, and it couldn't understand that we actually wanted to retrieve data from 2022, not 2024, 23. And for this one, we would need to have the more advanced rag. So here, what we need to do is we need to have the user agent that will select a specific tool that will correspond to the specific rag. So you can see here we have the free rag tools, and each of them corresponds to the specific annual report. In this case, every tool will have the description that will provide enough context for the agent to understand that we actually want the data, the information from the report that was published in 2022, right? We don't need to look up the 2023 or 2024 when the question is about the 2022 data. So that's why we would have to split all of our files, all our reports into this separate tools with the description, with the little description that will let the agent choose the right context for us. So for this one, we would need to import the LangChain libraries. The two extra ones are create retriever tool, where we'll create the tool for each file, for each document, right? And we will also need to create an agent using the method create react agent. So it's pretty simple. We would need to have the following process here, where we need to first identify the file paths, right? And then we would need to initialize our dictionaries to store retriever tools. Once we initialize, we need to iterate over each files. And for each file, we need to create a separate retriever, right? So for this one, parse the PDF into the text. We need to split the PDF into the pages. Then what we need to do extra here in the loop, we need to define our vector store and our retriever, okay? And what we also need to do is we need to give the name for the tool and a description for the tool. And this will be the context that will give us enough context for the LLM to understand whether to select a specific tool for our prompt. We need to iterate and add all of these retrievers into the dictionary, right? So now we can run our loop. Once we complete it, now we can see how many tools we have created. So basically we created each separate tool for each document. Okay, that's the idea of the complex rag, the more advanced one. Now we need to define the model again, which it's exactly the same line that we used before. And here we would need to define to pass our retriever tools. So we need to have the list of tools that we will pass for the agent to play with. And this command will create the agent for us, where we need to define the model, right? That will be the OpenAI model and then a list of tools, right? So we will define our agent. And now we can start playing with our prompt. We can ask what are achievements of NVIDIA in 2024 and see the results. So now you can see that our prompt and the AI response, where AI decided to pick the report search NVIDIA 2024 annual report tool for us. And that is correct. That's exactly what should be chosen for our prompt. And then if you ask the same, but for 2022, the agent will select the 2022 tool. And that's exactly what it does. So it works perfectly using the advanced rag. Thanks all for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and like, and see you soon.